Good morning, my friends. So, more political stuff to talk about. Um, I don't care if you watch or don't. I'm not trying to sway anybody's vote. I'm just reading information. So, I watched the debates in Florida last night. It's a pretty boring scene. It's Mitt versus Newt, and that's how the Republicans want to play it. Um, what I took away from the debate, and I want anybody who has interest in it to watch closely. I want you to see that slow movement of Gingrich towards Paul, three or maybe even four times. Him actually saying, "Oh, I agree with Dr. Paul here. We need to do yada yada yada." Um, this is my second make of this video because my first one I just kind of did debate analysis and left it at that. But I'm going to use some stronger language this time, because I just cannot believe that Republicans are willing to give Newt Gingrich a run at the presidency. Now, don't get me wrong, I try to be fair to everybody. I mean, even when we're talking a Republican versus a Democrat, I at least can, as much as I don't like Obama or agree with him, I still can tell you that I think I still think he probably did have every intention of trying to change certain things, but simply lacked leadership to get it done. There you go. There's a prop for my Democrat friends. But I try to give everyone a fair shot. But Newt Gingrich, I mean, this is why the Republican Party is a disgrace. This man had to resign. And this was talked about in the debate, lightly. Well, not lightly, it dominated a lot of the first part, but this man had to resign as leader of the House because his party blamed him for the failure, said he led the party astray, and he was too far right, so he was run out. Now he's trying to paint the picture that he resigned because he knew that he was bringing the party down and somebody else could better serve that. And don't let him say that bullshit. It's like Ron Paul called him out and said he simply didn't have the votes. It was a mess. Americans were unhappy with him. Even Republicans were unhappy with him. He didn't have the votes, okay? Not to mention his numerous ethic violations that, of course, he was never found guilty of, but paid the thousands of dollars towards. So, that's how Washington works. If you don't want to be found guilty, you pay a fine. So, doesn't mean he's not guilty. Just means he played it smart. And he was forced out of his leadership role. That's not that shouldn't even be up for debate because he was. I was alive in the 90s. I remember Newt Gingrich. I remember the hate that most people felt towards him, even Republicans. And to think that this party, after years of failed policy and years of just the party coming apart at the seams. I watched a video yesterday of someone who was saying that we should unite behind anyone who runs because our party's coming apart at the seams. This party needs to come apart at the seams. Are you crazy? There is no Republican or Democrat. There is the party in this country. There's no different. Republicans run huge debts. Democrats run huge debts. Republicans claim to shrink government. They grow it. Democrats grow it, and they grow it. But, it's ridiculous. Democrats are all for giving tax breaks, and they're right on that side of capitalism, that tax breaks and reducing the tax burden as much as possible is good for business, but not if you don't reduce the spending. You can cut taxes all day, but if you're still printing fake money and spending it, you're not doing any good. So, old Republican stuff, I cannot believe the party would actually give this man a chance. My most main note of things moving is how quite a few times Newt agreed with Paul, and I told you guys this already in this video, but it stands to be repeating more than once, and Paul even joked with him that if I could get him to move to a better foreign policy stance, I would endorse him. I'm not saying Paul would actually do that. I think it was more of a joke. And then he repeated again, well, we still have a lot of work on him on foreign policy. So yeah, I can't believe what's happening with Gingrich. I'm not as worried as the mainstream or you people, you Democrats and Republicans that hate him because he's not on the ballot in half the states. I think a lot of people forget that. He's going to miss out on 500 some odd delegates. Period. Those delegates are not attainable by Newt because he is not on the ballots in those states. It leaves you with Romney, who's no better. But Gingrich is not on the ballot, so at this point, he's probably playing the same game as Paul. It's the delegates game, because eventually, when you get to the convention, if no one has a majority or that 1100, whatever, that magic number, then it's brokered. And Gingrich is probably pulling for that to happen as well now, I think. That's my personal opinion. Because those 500 some odd delegates, someone's going to have to drop out, someone's going to have to concede, and then those delegates are open to vote for whoever they want. I think Gingrich is counting on old school Republicans to break his way at that point, saying that, well, hey, we really don't have any other viable option, so let's vote for him. That's the type of thinking that's got us to where we are in politics in general, Democrat or Republican. You know, we've got to stop this. Well, that's, I have to vote for him because that's all we have. That's a bullshit way to look at things. But so the debate was all about that for a while, but it was shocking to see the exchange between Paul and Gingrich and how he moved that way. I think that's the first setup of Gingrich trying to garner some of that discontent in the Republican Party, which I will give Ron Paul great credit. I'm still going to vote for Paul, but I'm going to give him great credit because he's playing the system beautifully. Ron Paul has always said he's in this for a delegate race, and he's smart because if he gets a block of delegates, then he has a voice in shaping the future of the Republican Party. I think the Republican Party leadership knows this, and that's why Gingrich is moving closer to him. If you don't believe me, watch the debate yourself. It happened 3 or 4 times. So what he's aiming for is to get some of those votes so that maybe at the convention floor he can say, look, I agree with what this guy is saying, Dr. Paul, but I don't go as far out as him, so I'm a little bit more stable. Vote for me. I would hope that wouldn't happen. True Ron Paul supporters won't buy into that. I won't, but a lot of people will. So I just can't believe that. It just baffles me. But we'll move past that. So, there was a lot of talk about that. It was a lot of talk about. We talked a lot about Cuba in this debate. What the fuck is up with that? I mean, I understand it's Florida, so I'm sure Cuba plays a big role in local politics there, state politics there. So, I guess I can understand that. But again, the only person with the right. I was very against Newt on this, and of course Santorum. I mean, this ideal that we need to maintain this isolationist view, and Rick Santorum even going as far to say Al Qaeda is waiting to set up in Cuba, and I mean, Jesus fucking Christ, my God, you'd swear they were hiding behind every blade of grass. And Newt saying we should continue it. Ron Paul has the best idea. Look, much like the Soviet Union, Cuba will fall. Their dictatorship will fall. Fidel Castro is probably dead, if not on his way to death. And his brother's taking over, of course, still going to try to continue the repression there and the dictatorship. But the problem here is that he's not as strong as his brother. And I think he will start to slip in the fact that I think his brother is more open to American talks and more open to some trade, some light forms of private business. And that's how it happens. It's how it happened in the Soviet Union. And when you move towards that, once you open that gate a small amount, you can't stop it. So Paul is right on that point where he says, we need to look at the big picture. Jesus, people, we've been doing this since before I was born. Do we not remember John F. Kennedy? So when I hear people like Newt and Santorum talking about even military action, are you crazy? Um, uh, because they did. I mean, Rick Santorum outright, but Newt Gingrich more in a soft tone that we ought to unify their people and have them take down their government. That's just soft speak for what we have in the Middle East already. Let's arm them. Let's do this, and they can now take their own government. Well, that's Bay of Pigs all over again. That was a miserable failure. We've had this, like I said, since before I was born. It does no good to ignore that they're down there, or to demise this plan to see their destruction. I'm not saying you go along and agree with the Cuban government. Don't get me wrong. At the same time, let events unfold. They will unfold in that manner. Because let me tell you, Rick Santorum, even though he's a fucking moron, uh, he's right. Cuba's going to be desperate for money and may allow certain factions in that can bring that money. So why not let the U.S. Play that role in some open dialogue? I think that's the best way to solve this. I think that's pretty much what most people have always said since the 60s. Is ridiculous to keep fighting all that. And Ron Paul made the quote, we're in the dark ages when we deal with Cuba. So one thing that stood out to me was Ron Paul moving more towards middle of the road stance. It was just a quick question on the Everglades and how the federal department is working with the State Department there to keep the Everglades alive, which is all great. But Paul, they were specifically asked if they would stop that federal program, and Paul actually said no, that he didn't see any reason to stop that program, that he thought it was okay. That's a very different move for Paul, because he's usually very anti-government. Good for Paul, because he moves a little less out of that loony category that the mainstream try to put him in. You know, so here we go. This is going to be the rest of the debates. You might as well just get used to that. It's going to be Romney against Gingrich. In the end, it's still all about delegates. I think at least Gingrich has come to that conclusion, and that's why you'll see him move even more towards the Paul views, not on foreign policy, never, but more closer to the views, so that he can try to garner those. But I will give Ron Paul his props. He's very good at this game, and he's working it beautifully. There is, he made the point about Iowa last night, which is very true. Iowa was basically a straw poll, and none of the delegates are placed. And Ron Paul, especially in Iowa, his people turned out after to get on the delegate more than anybody else's. So if you have a delegate packed with Paul supporters, especially in a place like Iowa, because you've got to remember everybody was in that race. So there's a lot of freed up delegates there, and where are they going to go? Because now they can vote for whoever. Again, guys, it's a delegate game. And Ron Paul's playing it smart. He will at least have a strong enough delegate block to institute some change in the platform. They did talk about it a little bit while the party has lost their way. Well, I think it's evident by looking at who's the current front runner, which is Gingrich. That should just answer your question right there. But, Paul, in usual fashion, came back with that. Well, I think we have to define what conservative is, and that's less government and civil liberties. That's something that, the party's definitely gotten away from, and everyone agrees with that. That's why there's so much discontent in the electorate. Republicans moving toward a more libertarian view slowly. I'm not saying overnight, but slowly. Gives the chance for more of a crossover vote. People are generally more giving on a social level than they are on a physical level. And that's fine. So you can embrace a conservative physical policy and yet embrace a more liberal social policy. That's why Ron gets the crossover so much. And so could the party if they moved more in that direction. So there's not much to say except that the game continues. You will be told you have two people to choose from when in fact you still actually have a good three. I wish Rick Santorum would get out of the race. And I'll probably meander off of topic a bit on that because I have never even followed Rick Santorum since the first debate. I thought the way he treated the soldier that video called in at the very first debate about the don't ask, don't tell, um, being reversed, and would he reinstitute it? And I thought that Rick Santorum was very disrespectful to that person, and I haven't given him serious consideration then because he's obviously too socially conservative. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to pander to any Republicans to accept the gay movement. But at the same time, it boils down to a civil liberties point of view. No, I'm not specifically for gay rights, but at the same time, I'm not against them. What I mean by this is you can, legally, there should be no bias, whatever. If they want to get married, so be it. Who cares? Why do you care? Why do you care? Doesn't matter. For the sanctity of marriage, it's laughable. I'm a married guy, but it's laughable to me because there's no sanctity left in marriage anymore. People get married for a month and then get a divorce, or they get married for money reasons. It's stupid. Federal government shouldn't even be involved in that. But the reason I had a problem with Santorum and the way he came at it is because here's the thing, and I tell my gay friends this and my straight friends this, is that no one can force their beliefs on you. And I think both sides on that issue have a lot to work with. And what I mean by that is, as a gay person, you have to realize that there are going to be people who do not agree with your lifestyle. And you have got to become okay with that fact. I think that's the problem with the radicals in that movement. Not all, believe me. I do not want to offend any of my friends because I love you guys. A lot of y'all are my friends and friends on Facebook, and I don't want you to take what I'm saying the wrong way. But there are some people in that movement that just need full acceptance. You need full legal acceptance, and I'll agree with that. To where you have the same rights as everybody else, and you have the right to live your life how you want and to marry if you so choose. However, you do not have the right for someone to agree with you, and this goes the same. This plays two ways to Christian conservatives as well. I'm not of that group either, but they have the right not to like you. And Christian conservatives, you have to realize that although you don't agree with them, you don't have the right to stop them legally from doing what they want to do. It's a dead issue. It's not much discussed about in this campaign, because Republicans are just Republicans on this issue, and I think most people know that where they stand on that issue. So Ron Paul doesn't. He's more open as far as marriage. I'm sure Ron Paul personally may feel some negativity towards homosexuals, and that's fine. But publicly, he has already said that's not my job. It's not a federal job. It's a state job. States should decide that issue. And I know a lot of people will disagree with me on that, but he's right. That's something the states can do, and federal government doesn't even have to get involved. I'm just saying to both sides, though, you need to understand that you cannot force your beliefs on a person. The hard right Christians cannot force that belief on people, and my friends in the gay community cannot force that belief on mainstream either. So while I agree with the fight for your legal rights, at the same time, you have to be willing to let other people not agree with you, and then fuck them. Don't associate with those people. It's that easy. I have people like that in my life, and so be it. Anyway, that's totally getting off on another issue that we don't even really need to talk about. But that is my view of Santorum, and I thought it was disrespectful. You cannot agree with someone's way of life, but you don't have to try to bring them back to their right place in life, that you feel they belong, and you don't need to discriminate against those people. So that's that on him. As far as Romney, that he's a Democrat. Everybody knows that. He was a Democrat. He switched parties. Good for him, but he's still very liberal, and so that's why he doesn't get my vote. Gingrich, well, you know why I can't stand him. So I'm left with Paul, and I will vote for him. My main point of this video was to discuss the movement of Gingrich towards more Paul open dialogue, and I think you're going to see more of that, because I don't think Gingrich is stupid in the fact that he knows he's going to lose out on 500 something delegates, period, because he's not on the ballot and he's missed the deadlines to get there. It's a closed discussion. There's no hope of him getting those. So when Ron Paul picks up a large block of those delegates, I'm not saying that Ron Paul will win, but when you have a choice between Romney or Paul, Paul definitely garners a lot more delegates at that point. And those delegates are going to have to go somewhere once they become free delegates on the floor. And I think Gingrich is counting on it to bank his way. Just as Paul is counting on it to bank his way, I think it would probably bank more towards Paul, though, because Paul has done an extraordinary job of putting his people in delegate positions. That's one of his main things, is making all of his supporters, making them delegates and getting them interested in the delegate process. So it's pretty smart. But other than that, that's what I said. Like I said, I've already done one video on this, and it was play-by-play of it, and I realized there's really no need for that. I still think Paul is a better candidate. I'm just more upset about the Newt Gingrich thing. I cannot believe that. The only other thing I can think of discussing would be they talked to them about if the Iran closed the Straits of whatever, I don't know what it's called. If they, I know what it is, I know where it is, I know what they're talking about. So if they were to close that, would it be an act of war? I'm torn on that, and I try to just be open on a lot of things. So I don't know. I'd probably, let me put it to you this way: if it happened, I probably would agree more along the lines that it is. But it is not because it affects the United States. What I mean by that is physically on our shores, but it affects the oil importation. Well, not just oil, lots of importation things pass through that strait. So I get that point of view. However, I still think Paul had the best answer, which was to step back and look at the big picture. Iran may be a horrible dictatorship, but they're not stupid. They're barely surviving as it is because of sanctions that are on them, and it would do them more harm than good to close the straits. Because I think they know they would face some military action, even if I would or would not support that. B, if they close the straits, they close their exports as well, guys. It's a common sense approach to a problem that's not as big as some may make it sound. They're not stupid. They wouldn't be able to get their products out if they closed it. So I doubt that'll ever happen. So I go along with Paul in that belief. If it did happen, if they were that stupid, I don't think they are. I think it's meaningless threats. Iran's good at that, and so be it. If they are, then if they do it, and they are that stupid, then I may change my position to maybe favoring what was discussed at that debate. But as of right now, I don't think it'll happen. I think it's a non-issue. I think it's just a lot of saber rattling, both sides, by us and them. And that's about it. So we covered everything I wanted to cover today. Discussed of Gingrich, discussed of the Republican Party for actually giving this man another chance. Discussed of Santorum, that I wish he would drop out of the race because he just He just doesn't belong there. That's probably more of a personal thing for me. I just I lost a lot of respect for him, and I've never bothered to listen to him since. He's a good conservative. I know that. I do listen to the debates, but I can't go that far right socially. I've never been able to go that far right socially. So so be it. And you guys have an awesome day.